Welcome, welcome. Good day to you all. Really lovely to see you here with us. My name is Dr. Jessica Bockler. I'm one of the co-founding directors of the Aleph Trust, and it's lovely to welcome you to this second webinar in our series of the Transforming Organizations Hub, which is really dedicated to bringing transpersonal perspectives to organizations, to organizational and leadership development. And this evening, we are with Jevon Dengeli, who is one of our faculty here at the Aleph Trust. Jevon will be exploring inner development through transpersonal coaching with us. Leaders, of course, have relied on coaching to help them solve problems and improve their organization's performance for many, many years. And Jevon is really well placed to be exploring that with us today. He's a graduate of the Aleph Trust's MSc program in transpersonal psychology, and he's also a deeply experienced coach. He has been in coaching for some 20 years now. He's also the course leader of the Transpersonal Coaching Psychology program at Aleph Trust. He has been, again, also that for many years. And Jevon has been coaching professionally since 2002, as well as providing training and mentoring for coaches. He's authored training manuals on transpersonal coaching, and he now also is senior editor of a transpersonal coaching psychology journal and many other things. Jevon also developed an embodiment practice called Jumi, Judo Mind, which is a lovely practice, actually. And I've seen you do that out in nature, connecting to both self and our deeper nature, Jevon, which is lovely. So there are many ways in which Jevon contributes to the Aleph Trust, but also the wider world, other activities outside of the Aleph Trust. He's co-founder of the Life Foundation, which is a non-profit whose mission is to create opportunities for positive change, providing free education resources to those who are engaged in humanitarian aid and environmental sustainability, which is lovely work, Jevon. So it's great to have you here. And yeah, let's jump right in with Jevon and explore inner development through transpersonal coaching. Jevon, over to you.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks for that warm welcome, and hello, one and all. It's lovely to be with you this evening. I'm calling in from Switzerland, so whichever time of the day it is, good day to you. And if you're watching the recording later on, may you feel just as welcome here in this virtual space with us. I'm going to start to share my screen now so that you can see what I'd like you to see, and we'll move straight into the presentation. So we're gathered this evening to explore inner development through transpersonal coaching, exploring the key principles of transpersonal coaching and how they can be leveraged to support inner development within organizations. I'm curious at this stage to know, by show of hands, physical hands or Zoom virtual hands if you prefer, who in the live space is currently involved in an organization, either directly working within the organization or providing a service to a corporate organization. I'm seeing quite a few hands go up, and I guess that's why we're gathered here this evening, because this is what we do. Okay, great. Just about everybody. All right, so I'd like to expand on our use of the word organization for the context of this webinar, because I anticipate that not everybody in the live session or catching the recording later on will be involved in organizational work, be that organizational leadership development or coaching. So let's consider an organization not only to be a corporate body, as in a big business or small business, but also a group, an organized group in which you are a member or participant. That could be a team of any kind, social group, or even a family. It could even be a group as small as a pair. So any level or size of organization is adequate as a context, whichever one resonates most for you or is the circle in which you move on your day-to-day basis. Okay. So moving right along, I'd like to offer you an image for reflection, and I hope you can see this. Is a photo taken at the river close by to where I live. Jessica mentioned earlier that I engage in my own practice known as JUMI, an acronym for Judo Mind, preferably in nature. And I'm privileged to have this place where two rivers flow into each other, creating a lot of turbulence. So you're looking at the meeting point where the Melezza River flows into the Maggia River here in the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland where I live. This is literally a stone throw from where I live. And I love to play with stones. I built this stone statue. They are indeed stones perched upon each other, balancing with no support of anything or any other little pebble, whatever one might think of to create balance. So my type of meditation is one of them, is to build these stone statues. And I'd like to offer this image as a point of reflection and invite us all to ease into our seats and to ease into our bodies and to make contact with our own felt sense of presence here and now within your body on the seat where you find yourself. And allow the scenery and atmosphere of these finely balanced stones and the surroundings of this image to be your place of resonance, your place in which you find yourself resonating. And whichever way you feel or sense resonance within you right now, whether it is in relation to this image or whether it is the sensation of your breath or the weightedness of your body resting upon the seat where you are right now. Just bring your attention to whatever that is for you, whatever that aliveness is that flows in and through you. Taking a few moments to really situate yourself in the here and now. Finding that midline, that vertical line within you. And allowing your awareness to gravitate down toward the bottom of that midline. Feeling yourself connected to the seat where you are and connected to the solidity of the ground below the soles of your feet. And below the structure in which you find yourself now, connecting to the land, connecting to the soil, the stones, and the substance of earth. Feeling grounded and centered. Allowing awareness to drift up from the earth through your midline to the top of your head, allowing an elongation of the spine as you extend awareness beyond the top of your head, connecting to your sources of aliveness from above, the air, the light, and the entire cosmos. And then drawing back down the midline, situating awareness in your center point in the lower abdominal area. And just allowing your awareness to gravitate with the breath, feeling the steady movement of in and out breaths as they flow through you. Enjoying the rhythm and pulsation of the breath. And then allowing awareness to expand around your body, enveloping your body in your own field of awareness as you sense into the entire volume of space that your whole body occupies. Really allowing awareness to expand around yourself now. Top to bottom, left to right, front to back. A sphere of awareness in which you feel your body as a whole, including the space around your body. And as you sense the wholeness within and around you, you can allow that awareness to expand, filling the room where you are, so that this field of awareness in which you are contained breathes through you and extends beyond you, filling the room with your presence. And notice what it feels like to deliberately fill the room with your presence. And then allow that expanded frame of reference to return back to your bodily experience. And just notice what you're feeling within. Notice what's alive within you right now. And see if you can identify a word or a phrase that best captures what you're sensing within yourself right now in this state of somatic open awareness. And then if you feel like putting into the chat window what it is that's alive for you, if there's a word or phrase that best represents your experience of aliveness, what might that be? And if you feel like sharing that, you're welcome to pop that into the chat window. Wholeness arriving at the horizon, tranquility, contentment came up, joy, feeling grounded, grounded and open-hearted, expansion, lovely, caring, stillness. Thank you for sharing, everybody. So now I'd like us to engage in a little task before we move into some slides in which I'll be presenting some content. First of all, to think about a past turbulent experience in which you have been, a turbulent situation involving others, one or more people, and they were playing a role in that turbulence, but a situation in which you found yourself grounded and open. So I'm asking you to recall a turbulent situation involving others in which you remained grounded and open. And as you call up a memory of such a situation in which you are grounded and open, how did you feel toward the other people in that situation? How did you feel toward the others who were playing a role in the turbulence? And how did you respond? So now I'm going to ask you to think of two words. The word that best describes how you felt toward the others when you were grounded and open, and a word that best describes your response. A feeling word and an action word. How did you feel toward them as a grounded and open presence? And how did you respond in that turbulent situation? Please put your two words in the chat window if you don't mind. Compassion, calm response. Present and open to listen. Bewildered, quiet. Patience with kindness. Benevolent and leading with care. Beautiful. In control, patience. I felt porous and receptive and was non-reactive in my presence. Lovely. Thank you for sharing, everybody. And what I think I'm starting to see are what can be considered islands of coherence in a sea of chaos. And according to Ilya Prigogine, or Prigogine, easy for him to say, it's a Russian name, or Belgian, or something like that. In any case, when a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have a capacity to shift the entire system to a higher order. And from your sharings, I think what we see is that quality of higher order or functionality in which you're able to ride those waves gracefully and bring about solidity in instability. And that is what I think is this type of higher order that is being referred to. At least that's how we can give it meaning with relevance to the context of transpersonal coaching and the quality of chaos that we might experience in organizations. Islands of coherence for people and planet. Stephen Posner posits that islands of coherence can emerge in an organization when its people, knowledges, skills, values, vision, policies, and leadership overlap to benefit all. The potential of systemic coherence in organizations requires a shift from egocentric systems to ecocentric systems that embrace the interconnected whole. For such coherence to occur, we need to shift our own inner conditions from a closed to an open mind, heart, and will, both individually and collectively. And that comes from Otto Scharmer. And in this evening or today's webinar, what I hope to convey is how the fundamental skill set used in transpersonal coaching, which is the skill set of applied open awareness, supports the potential of such coherence for individuals, for teams, for organizations, for society, and by extension, for the planet as a whole. So I'll be presenting what open awareness is, how we utilize it in transpersonal coaching, the potential benefit of that for organizations. And then I'll get into some examples, and there'll be plenty of time for discussion as we go. So inner development for individual and collective coherence. Those of you who work in organizations, if you're anything like my clients who are employed by organizations, may have experienced or confronted others who have experienced distress, anxiety, overwhelm, performance issues, power and prestige, competitiveness, conflict, communication breakdowns, and the process of change, which seem to resemble a sea of chaos. And again, according to Hasna, small islands of coherent clarity can take shape through one individual shifting from tunnel awareness, which we can think of as egocentric awareness, to open awareness, which is ecocentric, considering the larger sphere and environment. And the way in which open awareness may enable this enlarging sphere of experience and of influence is through what we can consider the open awareness trifocal. And through my own research, spanning some 20 years now, informal and formal research, I've come to realize these particular characteristics of open awareness. It is a quality of awareness in which attention comes close to being both inwardly oriented, focused on how we think and feel and what's going on within us, while at the same time being oriented outward, being aware of and sensitive to the others in our immediate environment, which is called outrospection in the slide. And then further afield, in virospection, a sensitivity and an awareness of the space that connects us to everyone and everything in nature and in the cosmos. So this is the trifocal lens of open awareness, which is a broad and inclusive perspective, which promotes a participatory view in which individuals establish a deeper sense of connection between each other and with the rest of life. And therefore, applied open awareness promotes coherence, and it is naturally ecological, which means beneficial for people, for organizations, and for planet. And so we see a diagram here in which we see how we are embedded in planet and society, organizations are embedded in planet and society, people embedded within organizations. And so we notice the interrelatedness of all these phenomena, but that often goes unnoticed and is disregarded in the humdrum of busy day activities and stress, which tends to narrow awareness down to whatever is triggering one person in any particular situation. And our findings in transpersonal coaching is that whenever a client presents an issue, we're able to identify that the trigger of the presenting issue involves a narrow, focused attention on the person or situation that they're unable to be with in a resourceful way. So they're being activated by this person or situation, and it's causing them to feel and respond in ways that they would prefer not to be feeling and responding in. And in all cases, there is a narrowing fixation of attention. And so what we've found is that in the context of the trigger, once that is elicited, if the individual or the team for that matter is able to identify the trigger and then practice the skill of opening the aperture of their awareness, similar to that little guided process you had a taste of at the start of this webinar, they're able to bring to bear the characteristics of open awareness, that trifocal, which offers the client new ways of perceiving the situation that was triggering them and a new range of responses that weren't available to them when triggered. And what that does is it diffuses the energy of the trigger. It literally drains out any negativity or unresourceful feelings so that the client is able to respond in a more mindful way. Now, the characteristics of open awareness, this more mindful orientation, I've tried to depict in this open awareness holon. This can be considered an island of coherence in the relational field. These are characteristics of open awareness, all beginning with useful C words. So this is what occurs in the relational field between people who are in open awareness. There is clarity, there is the capacity for co-regulation and co-creation and collaboration. There is compassion between them, and of course, a deepened sense of connection. And so this can be considered, as we put together all of these C words, a very resourceful state, a mindful orientation, and it is activated with relative ease through becoming aware of the entire volume of space that your whole body occupies. Because when you're attending in such a way, you're no longer narrowly fixated on the person or situation that has triggered an unresourceful state. So there and then, in the context of the trigger, the person who's able to open that aperture of awareness through utilizing this open awareness skill set finds new meaning in terms of the meaning they were giving the person or situation and a new range of responses. And what supports that, if we extend this holon and look at it more in terms of a hierarchy, holons connected to other holons forming a larger whole or hierarchy, we can identify participatory islands of coherence. So the open awareness hierarchy diagram here represents the states and perspectives that are also characteristic of open awareness as an individual experiences open awareness and deepens into the open awareness experience. So going beyond the entire volume of space that your whole body occupies and deepening into that, spending a bit more time exploring the phenomena associated with open awareness, which is typically done through meditation, through contemplative practices, communion with nature, and many other spiritual practices. As one deepens into that expanded sense of self, these types of characteristics start to become apparent. And if open awareness was represented with that Zen circle or Enzo at the center of this diagram, then the circles that spiral out from there become the first qualities of open awareness that one starts to attune with. And as open awareness deepens or expands for that matter, then these more expanded states of consciousness start to move into the client's direct experience, or the client starts to have a more direct experience of these expanded states. However, For our purposes in this diagram and in this context of organizational development, what the open awareness hierarchy can also represent is that when one individual, represented by the Enzo at the center of the diagram, enters into open awareness, there is a ripple effect. Those around them come into coherence. We know that when we're in the presence of a highly stressed person, their stress can wear off on us. And the same applies to when we're in the presence of a very grounded and open individual. That quality of presence, when they fill the room with it, as you had a go at doing at the start of this webinar today, we feel that, we sense that presence, either consciously or unconsciously. It tends to rub off on us. And when that presence is a grounded and mindful one, then we tend to pick up on that. And it's calming and it's soothing. There's co-regulation there. And we're able to come back into our center, come back into the present moment, and approach challenging situations from that positionality. So the open awareness hierarchy has two representations here: the experience of open awareness as it deepens, but also the ripple effect of open awareness as it supports others in our immediate environment through us being in open awareness. So apply to coaching now. So transpersonal coaching uses open awareness skills to create a safe and receptive container for clients, supporting them to expand their self-construct and worldview while enabling them to access multiple intelligences such as cognitive, somatic, emotional, social, psychological, and spiritual. And we see how the integration of open awareness helps individuals and thereby organizations to perceive crises as opportunities for growth, fostering coherence and ecological enactment. Win-win-win in this context is beneficial for self, beneficial for those around us, and beneficial for the organization as a whole, or perhaps even further than that, beneficial for planet. And so at the heart or at the core of our transpersonal coaching model is the application of open awareness, becoming more coherent within ourselves, enveloping our clients in that field of coherence so that they feel safe, feel heard, feel understood, attuning deeply with the clients in that way. We find that in so doing, as the clients enter into open awareness with us, they immediately start to change their way of perceiving whatever has been activated for them in the triggering situation. And very often that open aperture enables them to find the answers that they're looking for with no other coaching intervention even coming into play. But of course, our approach to coaching isn't limited to only the skill of open awareness. It's simply the way of being in a coaching session rather than doing coaching. We're supporting the client to come into presence through being in open awareness and exploring the nature of the challenge that they've brought to the coaching through the lens of open awareness. And then, if further leverage is required, then we have other more robust coaching techniques to draw from as and when necessary. So a graduate of the Transpersonal Coaching Psychology program at Aleph Trust, Kate King, is an executive and team coach, a very successful one based in Dubai. And through her own experience over several years now of applying transpersonal coaching in a corporate setting, Kate describes that organizations thrive when they are driven by a consideration of the collective good rather than ego-based agendas. A transpersonal approach helps leaders to access this expanded perspective, going beyond the tunnel vision of day-to-day tasks to connect self, team, and wider world. And the following slide gives you some insight into how that works. This is a visual of what I've tried to describe before, where the accessing of open awareness in the context of the triggering issue supports the client in gaining a new perspective. And that new perspective often sheds sufficient light that enables the client to generate movement toward their desired outcome. Open awareness also has within it this hindsight perspective, as you might have seen in the open awareness hierarchy, that enables the client, if and when necessary, from a perspective where they're not identified with the part of themselves that has been triggered, from that bigger picture perspective, which astronauts have referred to as the overview perspective, being above it all, looking down, zoomed out, the bigger picture where there's more objectivity, identifying the pattern that has led to why the issue is there. So we can actually see the root cause. Without doing therapy, we're able to identify where the trigger stems from, the underlying issue or the root cause that has given rise to this. And we're able to do so within the context of coaching, because open awareness enables the client to remain present here and now with that open aperture that identifies all aspects and facets of the presenting issue so that they can work with that holistically in an integrated way. And at the same time, the desired outcome that they want to move toward, this can be an individual or team, is elicited from that open frame of reference. In other words, it comes from a more inclusive and holistic perception as opposed to an ego-based desire. Ego is in tunnel awareness, fixated on its own needs and wants, while beyond ego, open awareness enables the client to identify what is of genuine value to them in a specific context and to establish steps toward the fulfillment of that desired outcome that doesn't disregard ego, works with ego, but puts ego in the passenger seat so that it can come along for the ride and enjoy the scenery along the way, instead of determining who's driving this vehicle. There's one more example I'd like to share of how we work in transpersonal coaching, and it's referred to as the open awareness integral process. This is a 5-step process that's very versatile and adaptable. It can be applied to individuals and it can be applied to teams. It's also a way of co-creating islands of coherence within a group or a team. And for example, a team could come together and they come together for a specific intention. Maybe there's an issue that needs to be handled and they decide to come together. The intention is to find a solution to that problem. So the intention is clarified in step 1. Before proceeding this presentation, I've tried to identify and point out why open awareness is an appropriate stage before going further. So once the intention for the session is clarified, the next step in this process is to enter into open awareness. We did so together briefly at the start of today's session, utilizing one way of entering into open awareness, and there are countless other ways that transpersonal coaches are trained in. And once the group have entered into open awareness together and co-created that participatory space, they then each give expression to what their individual and collective experience of open awareness is. This is step 3. Each individual in the team for that session on the day expresses what's alive for them. I asked you to do so in the chat window at the start of the session today, so you can see how this webinar is in fact following this process, the open awareness integral process. Then there is synthesis, bringing all those ideas together, looking for the common denominators, the red threads, while honoring each person's expression and that they might not all resonate with each other, holding space for diversity, but looking out for what might be one agreeable common denominator that the group in open awareness have discovered for themselves. And that's common red thread inspiration that the group come to realize together. They then discuss and explore ways of integrating that into their organization. And that would be another example of how open awareness can be applied in a corporate setting. So that's a fair amount of talking from me. For now, I'd be curious. A little game. I'd like you to consider a change you would like to see in your personal life or in your professional life or in the world. And as you think about a change that you would like to see, then focus on what small step you can take today to begin embodying that change. And once you've identified the small step you can take today to begin embodying that change, then think about who shares a similar intention with you and how can you co-create an island of coherence with them. Who could you approach? Who might they be with whom you could begin to co-create an island of coherence? I'd like you to really think about this now, the change you want to experience, how you can begin to embody that, and who might share that intention with you. And just write that down so that it's clear for you while we're on the slide. And if you feel like sharing in the chat window what's coming up for you, it would be great to hear what's coming up for you, to see what small step you'll be taking. What seems possible and realistic. So I'm going to pause here, give you some time. And if at this stage anybody feels like unmuting, telling us what's going on for you, what's the change you'd like to see, what step you could embody, and where might you begin? Who might you approach to co-create an island of coherence? And if there are any questions, if you're not sure about how to proceed with this, then feel free to speak up, to ask your question. Okay, so you're taking note for yourself, the change that you'd like to see in your personal or professional life or in the world, and the step you can take to begin embodying that, and who you can approach to co-create an island of coherence with. We're seeing from Desiree in the chat window for humans to spend more time communing in person and less through devices. I can arrange to meet friends in person. Many friends would be delighted to co-create this, I believe. I'm sure I, for one, would be one of those. Thanks for sharing. So if you're still busy with that task, please feel free to continue. And there's one more question for discussion I'm going to bring up next. So what experience have you had of mindful coherence in a team or group, and what was the outcome of that? What experience have you had of mindful coherence in a team or group, and what was the outcome of that? Right now, I'm going to pause my screen share so that we can come into this group together and see each other a bit better. Lovely to see others that I didn't see before the screen share. At this point, I'd be really curious to hear about the experiences any of you have had of mindful coherence in a team or group and the outcome of that experience. I would be worried if nobody's had such an experience before, because that would be quite illuminating in and of itself. Barbara, did you just put your hand up? I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you, Javon. I'm really enjoying this. Very nice. I'll share my experience, but just briefly before that, what's making me smile is that one of my things that I would like to change about myself is my indecision, and then I couldn't decide what the step was I was going to take. So I'll get there one of these days. But yeah, I mean, I worked in a corporate world for 25 years in senior positions. And I was initially like very aggressive, get stuff done, and, high performing, blah, blah, blah. And at a certain point in my journey, I was introduced to breathing. I didn't know the science of all of this at the time. And I, found out, the science after, I left that world and did a lot of new research. But basically, I know now that my heart was in a much more resonant frequency, and then how my teams reacted towards me also changed. And I used to start all our meetings, with a little breathing, you know, and just everyone was much more open, much more, if there's a problem, sharing, asking questions. And that was because I basically, changed, I know now, the shape of my heart rate variability and the resonant frequency that I was giving out to the teams and so on. So beautiful, it was amazing and so simple. And, I mentioned, that I, sent to INSEAD and here and there and all these leadership development things. Nothing changed me like being, breathing, heart frequency, etc., etc. Changed me just like, different world, different person.
Yeah.
Hope that speaks to the question. Okay.
It certainly does, Barbara. Thank you so much for sharing that experience of yours. And I just have one question. In the corporate setting, how willing were people to engage in, let's sit down and breathe together and do this strange woo-woo stuff?
Yeah, no, I
Was there
found
openness to that?
absolutely. And I mean, I guess I was the boss, but incredibly, like even when I was based in Nigeria, and, I had leadership team, all these 6 foot something guys, and I'm a 5 foot and a bit, person. They loved it. They changed so much. And the performance was just, yeah, I think we're a bit scared to introduce it. But what I found is that people were actually really, really receptive. Yeah. And then they feel it, they experience it, yeah, there was definite receptivity. And
Once you've broken the ice. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you for sharing your experience. That's great to hear.
I am here.
Louise. Thank you. I can see your hand is up, Louise.
Yeah, happy to share if you're still taking a share.
Yes, we are.
So I've worked a lot in corporate, and I would educate, especially my change makers, around state management, because it was essential. As change makers, if you walk into a room, you have to know what state you're in, because that's part of the positive contagion that you can be bringing in terms of groups. But one of the, I used to run retreats for change makers and senior leaders. And one of the pieces I would always get them to work on the last day of the retreat was that they had to sustain flow. So they had to be centered, mindful, and in flow. That was the only piece. It was like, then you can just create what you want together, but you got to stay in flow. And one of the things I've always found magical was what they would say to me. And these were, usually engineers, very left brain. And they would say that because I'd insisted on the flow piece, they would go off and basically follow that and start creating something. And then what they found is that when they got together to finally have a conversation about what they were meant to be creating together, often they'd actually created the different parts of the same thing, because they'd been actually be able to sustain the flow. So there was a real piece there also about how state can really produce co-creation at a completely different level. So I just wanted to share that.
That's really showing cohesion and how people can come into a collective state together, and that there's something very potent and beautiful that can emerge from that. So I appreciate your sharing. Thank you so much, Louise. Again, we're seeing that there is receptivity in certain corporate settings for this type of work, which is very refreshing. Offers me a sense of hope for the future. I can see some things coming to the chat window. I've not been following that. I can see others have. Good to see. Just yesterday in the Nurturing Fields of Change meeting, there was coherence, as there always is in those wonderful meetings. Yes. That answers Henry's question, Nurturing Fields of Change, NFC. Okay. Has anybody else experienced mindful cohesion in a group or team? And what was the outcome of that? I'm sure we've all experienced the opposite of mindful connecting that way, haven't we? But Scott, I can see you've unmuted. Please, I'd love to hear from you.
No, I work in a large financial institution, and I regularly I'm a lead for the wellbeing initiative within the division, and I started introducing these open awareness style, not quite exactly what you were offering at the beginning, a little bit more focused attention, but more, I guess, a little bit broader than that. And initially, I find that the feedback I get afterwards is like, I was skeptical, now I love it. And it's like they really look forward to it as a way of just, for them just coming into the space, often from transitioning from one particular state, which might be, stressed or dysregulated in some shape or form, and just finding that sense of balance again. And then there is that sense of cohesiveness that just emerges. And then actually we check in with each other on a score of 1 to 10, being all mental health first aiders, and we're all very honest and open how we feel. So that also allows that sense of receptivity and openness to emerge through being very vulnerable, whether you're 8 or a 9, which is generally seen as being positive, or 6 or below, which is generally seen as being someone who's might be in a difficult state. But being able to express that comfortably through the practice has really been really wonderful.
Scott, thanks for sharing. Again, this instills hope in me when we're seeing that there is openness and receptivity to these practices. And I think perhaps we're coming of age. It's no longer so woo-woo as people have thought it to be in many organizations, which offers a lot of hope for those of us transpersonal practitioners who are out there doing this work and seeking ways to bring it into organizations, because we're actually noticing that it does lead to positive results, not only in terms of corporate wellness, but in terms of performance also. I think there's no way in which we can actually turn a blind eye to that anymore. Wally, I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you very much. And just to echo really what's been shared, and with the added personal observation that what's also being cultivated is a skill. And so the magic that I've observed that, with practice, with time, with patience, teams can come together and perhaps create music the way bands, quartets, orchestras come together. So I have personally witnessed that. And it does take time, it does take patience and cultivation practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Wally. Yeah, really speaking to coherence and emphasizing practice there right at the end. This is not something you do once, done and dusted. It requires regular, consistent practice. So for oneself, you've seen the image of where I go every day. I can actually say I go there every day. There's some very rare occasions when I don't, because that's where I find inner coherence. When coming together online with students and clients, we start, as we did today, with similar exercises, try to diversify, make things different, so it's not always the same script, but similar practices to first commune in a meaningful way, to create coherence, to co-create that participatory space. And from there, as a starting point, we can really start to do wonderful things together. But missing that opportunity really feels like a lost opportunity. But it requires the engagement in that practice, in the skill. If not applied, it's an opportunity lost. Otherwise, also, if you leave it to those moments when, I often say this to clients at the end of sessions, say, you've now got this useful skill at your fingertips, use it to open the aperture of your awareness. If you don't, it will just be an idea of what you could do, but it's conceptual, it's not embodied. That means when you need it, you can just sort of think about it, but it's out of arm's reach because you haven't yet embodied it through diligent practice. It's the embodiment of the open awareness that makes it part of who you are and therefore readily available in those times of need. So Wally, thank you for reminding me of that. Jessica.
Yeah, thank you, Javon. As I was listening to everyone, I was just taken back to an organization I worked with. This was 15 years ago or so. And it wasn't a very comfortable situation. I remember at the time, this was around the time when the UK was going through the financial recession, and public services were under pressure and had to cut back a lot. And this was in a public art gallery. And I remember it was a very difficult meeting that I had with the senior manager of the gallery and the team around her. And I'm just thinking of that now, and how in a way it was completely the opposite of everything that we're just exploring. This senior manager felt under immense pressure. The arts are always the first of the services that get cut when there is no money. And it felt like with her as if she'd sort of sucked all the air out of the room. There was fear in the room. It was really charged and really intense. And nobody wanted to speak up and speak out. And I think it's useful for us to reflect on, how do we change a moment like that? How can we introduce air back into the room when people feel under immense pressure? Because that's what's real, right? For us in many, many different circumstances now around the world. High levels of fear, high levels of stress and pressure. And when you come into that, me as an outsider in this case, I was actually brought in as a consultant in regard to some of the programming that was taking place. But, also when you're in that, how to navigate that, how to resource yourself, and how to enable a shift in the team. And I'll just, maybe we could have a little bit of a discussion around that. I'd love to kind of, see what's the response in the room. I remember sitting around the table and just sort of leaning back and going, okay, just breathe again. Remember to breathe, breathe, feel into your own body, anchor down, breathe. And then I invited in a little bit of shaking out. I made a couple of comments saying, let's just, shake it all out, people, how we're doing. I tried to shift that energy, but it was really quite difficult in the moment. And I'm sure others have experienced similar situations. I'm curious. Yeah. Yeah. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, Jessica, thank you for that sort of very visceral approach to shake it off, to get people up and moving. I think one of the most effective and rapid ways to change one's state is to get the body moving and breathing in a very different way from the activated state. So really useful reminders. Thank you for that. Wendy. Wendy, are you able to share your camera? It'd be lovely to see you if you're going to speak. If not, that's quite fine. Unmute, have your say. I'm looking forward to hearing your South African accent. But Wendy, we just see your hand up. Oh, now you've unmuted. And we see you.
Okay. Good evening, Javon. It's good to see you and Jessica and Eleanor and all Karen, all the familiar faces, and Terry that I have got to know through the nurturing fields of change. And if I miss anyone here, my apologies for not naming you, but it's good to see familiar faces. Yes, I would like to add to what Jessica just said about breathing and taking time to breathe. I believe one can only breathe if you're quiet and not speaking. You can really breathe well. I was thinking while you were speaking just now, Javon, and we were mentioning like action and doing things. And I was thinking there are two words I'm missing from our discussion. And those two words are like quietness and silence. Because in my situation, I often find that in uncomfortable contexts, the power of quietness and silence is very strong, and it brings calmness and the feeling of balance, even out of professional situations, even between and amongst friends. If you feel that you need time out and you respect the other person's silence or quietness, and they know that you give them space to be quiet and not communicate, and you understand that they need the quietness and the silence, I think that is also valuable to bring balance back in one's life, because so many things are happening out there and we experience it in different ways, and we respond like emotionally, we respond different to the news that we hear every day. So some of us need silence and some people are more expressive, but I think the power of silence is valuable in bringing back the mindful coherence. We do not need to speak or act. We can be silent together.
Thank you,
That is
Wendy.
my contribution.
Thank you for your contribution. And I have to concur. That's the sweet spot at the center of coherence, the silence, the stillness, isn't it? And how wonderful it is if we're able to drop straight into that and respect others who need and who can benefit from silence. I think it does open a question. What about a very heated room of egos clashing and debate and conflict? where's the place for silence? I believe it has its rightful place, but perhaps we need to wind things down and perhaps, as Jessica has already reminded us, shake it off, breathe it out, and do some things so that we can come into being. Sometimes we need to release that energy so that we can come into stillness. And so skills to bring us into that place of stillness can be really useful. And there's so many ways in which we can do that. And I guess as transpersonal coaches, we certainly need to be able to calibrate to what the client, whether individual or group, is needing and what is suitable in the context so that we can speak to them using their language, meet them where they're at, and guide them to the appropriate kind of mindful coherence. Today, that's the buzz phrase, but sometimes I refer to it just as open awareness. In a way that's beneficial for the client. So there's no one size fits all when it comes to this work.
Question there in the chat window, actually, Javon, around, can you share some strategies for diffusing tensions?
Well, I think it's a very suitable question. I think many people in this group today are very well equipped to answer that. I myself would like more clarity, what type of tension in what type of context. Then I might be able to give a type of example that could be most fitting. Could we get some clarity on that question? GK, who's GK? Sorry.
Yeah, so I think when emotions are elevated, particularly when it comes to something like anger, right? And frustrated with some sort of response or result, what would be some good strategies for diffusing tensions?
Okay. And are we speaking about a corporate setting?
Yes, it could be, let's say, if you are coaching in a university setting, for example.
Very good. Thank you for that. The context always helps in transpersonal coaching. We work in a specific context to keep the work kind of clean and relative to the case. It's still quite a broad question. Tensions would probably arise because of misunderstandings and unmet needs. People not, in terms of energy, not on the same wavelength. So there needs to be some understanding of why the group are together and what it is that they're hoping to achieve for that meeting or whatever the situation is. So the intention needs to be clarified. Otherwise, it's too easy for people to bring in irrelevant talk, examples, or whatever. When things become irrelevant, then they can easily become heated. So I'm going to, if I'm a coach in such a situation, want to know from the people involved, what's our intention? What unmet needs are in the room? Where's the elephant in this room? And just seek to get as much clarity as possible. And then I'm also going to be curious as a transpersonal coach on what is the main focus of attention? What has triggered the anger in this situation? Because as we can consider that triggering person, scenario, whatever the case may be, but first enter into the open awareness state, then we'll immediately diffuse the intensity of the anger and be able to speak about it in a more balanced and grounded way, and then start to meet the unmet needs, resonate on the same wavelength, and find a way forward together. But I'm sure others have a great response to that very good question of yours, and I want if anybody else wants to contribute or offer another idea. Fair amount going on in the chat window. So whether you'd like to speak to the challenge of diffusing tensions, as what he is now in the chat window, or raise another question, chocolate cupcakes always help.
I'll chime in if you like, because I have this all the time.
Zoe and then
Yeah. Hey, how you doing? It's such an interesting conversation because I worked at Condé Nast, which is a huge media as a chief people officer. So I had my fair share of babysitting. This is my previous corporate life, so not right now. But one thing I learned about these situations is what not's being said. So it's that the underlying energy of there's a lot of words and expression, and sometimes in the moment it's not the best use to try and diffuse in the moment, but just create space, create time to just allow. And because that can very quickly turn into an ego, absolute fueled ego response playground, which can be very, very unhealthy. And it just fuels more and more aggravation, irritation. So what I've almost found very useful is to contract at the beginning of each meeting to kind of like, if we get into this place and space, I'm going to call time that we're just going to all take a walk, take 10 minutes and come back. And just kind of express what the irritation has been. No one is to defend or to justify, but just to kind of like, if you can identify what really is the core thing, to try and allow everyone to have an expression and be heard. Because that is essentially, from my point of view, what I've always encountered is people want to be right. I will be right no matter what, and I don't care what other people are saying. I'm going to shower you with facts and objectivity and tell you that I'm right. When in fact, when people are very emotional, that's, you know, to be seen and heard and all of those things. So sometimes thinking on one's feet to create that space, but I'd after a few occasions learned that I needed to be able to call time and get the buy-in from people when they're not charged, when they're not in that energy. So when we're out of that, we can kind of say, right, if this arises again, what can we do that will create that space and diffuse the situation in an uncharged way? So for me, that was always very effective. And I'm talking very senior people at board level that are very ego-driven. And that would work beautifully. So that is one thing that I would recommend. But something also that I learn is we all have our own style, our own personality, and you have to leverage that. So you can't be an inauthentic robot, because that doesn't help the situation either. So compassion, acknowledgement, and just accepting we are where we are, and we need to move the energy on. So it's somebody to do that needs to be able to hold a contained space as well, if that's helpful for anyone.
Yeah, thank you, Zoe. Holding space, my summary of what you've shared there, and the capacity to hold space, even for the hottest of tensions that may arise in the room. And another take home for me of your sharing there, Zoe, thank you very much, is the contracting. So up front, we all know this is why we're here, and should this or that type of thing happen, this is the protocol. All right, so we've all signed that. That seems like a very sensible approach, and certainly is standard in coaching. Yeah, great. Just before, Terry, you had your hand up. Is there still something you wanted to bring to the conversation?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to share an experience I had. Then I saw that Barbara had put the same thing into the chat, really. And that's, I was working with a team of fund managers, and they were all individually bonused, earning lots and lots of big money individually. And their manager wanted them to work as a team. And in doing so, they created a lot of conflict in the team. And so I was brought in to try and work with this conflict and help them to work as a team. But actually in the team, in the conference centre, in the meeting room, the conflict just erupted, and they were really going for each other and trying to hurt each other in many ways. So I thought, I've got to diffuse this. And I did exactly what Barbara suggested. I said, why don't we go for a walk around the park and do that? And it really helped. It was almost like, as Jessica said, bringing that oxygen into them as they're walking, the bodily movement and being in nature. And I noticed they were splitting up. It was, I think it's about a team of 7. They were splitting up into 2s and 3s and just working it all through. So a couple of laps at the park, and then they came back and they were ready to look at solutions. They'd worked it through themselves. So I think really giving space and walking, connecting with nature can really help to diffuse it and create that space and create that awareness, I think. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Terry. And there's something about taking a walk together, and there's a kind of communion. We're all walking, we're all engaging in the same activity. We have this in common. So highlighting the commonalities help to bring people into more coherence, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. I'm seeing a fair amount is going on in the chat window, which I've not been following that diligently. Louise shares finding that naming the actual dynamic and separating it from content helps. Yes, it brings them back to the accountability as to what they are creating. Absolutely. Yeah, sometimes people get swept up in a narrative that maybe is a little bit off topic, and bringing people back to what it is that is the reason why we are here. And that's why in the open awareness integral process, there is an intention as step 1, and it is what we end with. That is why we came together, and now we're going to move toward the fulfillment of that intention through the insights gained through the process itself. And yeah. I'm wondering if anybody has any questions with regard to some of the slides that I flew over, because I didn't want this to be a sort of monologue of me talking through a screen share, and just that kind of top-down approach. I was looking forward to this discussion. I'm very glad it's unfolding now. But I'm wondering if there's anything that needs to be picked up on again, if it was brushed past too swiftly for anybody. What I'm going to do as we near full time is put a link into chat window where you can download the slides from today's presentation. Have them there, they're full of links, and you now have them immediately available to you. Any last words? The value of islands of coherence within organizations, the role of open awareness in creating islands of cohesion, and how that can be applied through the vehicle of transpersonal coaching. Henry, I'm seeing your hand come up. Hello. Henry, your mic's up here, and if you move that in front of your mouth, does it help? There we are.
I didn't know I'd parked it up there. Yeah, I just wanted to share that I was introduced to the concept of setting an intention probably 9 months ago, something like that. And it has been the single most transformative thing for not only my work with groups, but also just going into any one-to-one conversation or any setting of any kind, just setting what my intention is and then putting that to one side. I've just found it the most amazing thing. So I was really interested that that was the first step, because that really resonates with me. And I think someone once said to me, intention affects attention or shapes our attention. And yeah, it's important to me. So I just thought I'd share that with you and the group.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Yes. So I think in all types of coaching, the intention at the outset of a particular session is crucial. Usually it takes the form of an elicitation of the presenting issue and the presenting desired outcome. And that gives shape to what the intention for a particular session or an entire coaching relationship might be. But I find it crucial that there is that intention for the same reason that you've identified, Henry. If it's there, it gives focus in a constructive form of attending, because intention is what we end up paying attention to. Intention, we could describe it energetically as that's the trajectory of energy flow. And then it's also been said, attention goes, energy flows where attention goes. So if we're focusing a clear intention, then energy is projected and attention supports that. So it's sort of this combination of energy flows with intention. Oh yes, there it is, Jessica. And intention sets that ball rolling in the direction that we want it to. But at the same time, remaining flexible. I think what might be helpful is if I just come back to a particular slide.
One other thing to throw in just while I was grabbing the mic.
Please do.
One of your C's that you mentioned on that slide, I was interested that you didn't mention contact, and I was just curious whether it's obviously a Gestalt term and approach, but I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Okay.
The importance of contact in coaching relationships and open awareness.
Yeah. Well, by contact, are you talking I anticipate not only about physical contact?
I'm not talking about physical contact at all.
No, not at all. But
No.
still contact. I think what I'm trying to do with the word connection is describe that quality of contact. Maybe it's just semantics, but connection is about making contact. And in transpersonal coaching, utilizing open awareness, it's contact with yourself, contact with others, contact with the broader environment. That's trifocal, which we can describe in terms of connection in just the same way. So perhaps for you, the word contact doesn't have the same meaning as connection. And there'd be no harm in including contact here. Would need to add another petal to this flower, but that would be quite fine.
Thank you.
So I thought just to elaborate on intention and why it's step one very briefly now. Intention sets the ball rolling in this coaching approach. Open awareness brings in creativity and responsiveness and receptivity so that there is a movement and the generation of ideas to address that intention. Everybody, if it is a group, is asked to express what that experience is like for them. Otherwise, it remains a personal endeavor, and coaching is about bringing forth ideas into the field where that matters to the individual or the group. Synthesis is the harvesting of those ideas, integrating them into one cohesive whole, and the integration is then the application of that in service to intention. And the link at the bottom of the slide, which you now have a link to, which is the entire presentation, but as you get to this particular slide, that link there, the Open Awareness for Change Initiative, describes the open awareness integral process with a tutorial video that teaches you, elaborating on all of these steps. So there's a tutorial video, and below that, several resources in relation to this very process. So it's all there and freely available for you within that link. So to close, I just want to emphasize this particular Margaret Mead quote, which I've adapted: "Never doubt that a small group of mindful and coherent people can positively impact the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And it seems that those of you present in this evening's session are already very much living that as your way. So I praise that. And in the 1 year certificate in transpersonal coaching psychology at Aleph Trust, we get into all the other ways of applying open awareness and transpersonal coaching skills, working with individuals and groups, should that interest you. This slide can lead you to more information. So I'll stop my screen share again, see if there are any last questions or comments, and then I'm handing over to Jessica for closing announcements. All right, Wendy, I'm seeing a question there. Is it a question? In the open awareness hierarchy slide, where would you place quietness and silence? Okay, I don't think I'll start my screen share again. Quietness and silence, if you open your own link to the presentation, well, first of all, quietness and silence, I would go so far as to say, are an inherent aspect of open awareness. When you're in open awareness, there is inner silence and stillness. And your experience of self is very often the experience of stillness, unimpaired, whole, and integrated. So open awareness also brings forth into conscious awareness that which is impairing you from experiencing silence or stillness for that matter. So there might be parts of yourself that are activated. And let's say you'd like to meditate. You'd like to enter into quietness and silence, but you find difficulty doing so because you've got a busy monkey mind. Open awareness will help you to identify the cause of that busy monkey mind so that you can identify the part that requires integration. And transpersonal coaching includes that parts integration so that you're able to no longer have that kicking and screaming part of yourself every time you want to go into stillness or quietness. But if you look at somebody in open awareness, you'll be seeing somebody who appears to be meditating. They're quiet and they're still, because that is a quality of open awareness. Now, I don't know, Wendy, if that has even approached the answer to your question, but if you have a follow-up, you're welcome. Contact and connection, thank you. There is a link that is somehow connecting them. Contact and coaching, that really interests me. I'll click on that link straight away. Thank you very much. We've reached full time. I'd like to thank you all for your intention to be here and your attention throughout the session today. It's been a pleasure to speak with you about a topic that I'm deeply passionate about and engage in every single day of my life. So thank you for coming along and being part of this sharing. And I'd like to hand over to Jessica for closing remarks and an announcement.
Thank you very much, Javon. And I'm kind of feeling the calmness in the space here between us. Thank you for all your contributions and for the explorations around how we can weave open awareness, inner work into organizations, into our daily experiences in organizations. I think it's a really, really important topic. And we continue the journey. We are gathering again on the 14th of January, this time with Terry, who's also in the room, Terry Sexton, who will be exploring consciousness development. So the development of, stages of consciousness and how they can be developed in service of organizational development. And Terry will also be linking back to the inner development goals in that context. So that's on the 14th of January. And I'm just going to post the link back again in the chat window there. That's referring you back to the hub that we have on our website where you can follow the activities that are taking place. We're posting new events as time unfolds, so just keep an eye on that. And you can also sign up there for the newsletter if you don't want to keep an eye on the website all the time, so that you get pinged with messages when the new events come on stream. Thank you, Javon, and thank you all for being with us today. We wish you well, go on your journey, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.